Tervetuloa Ustavani. Welcome to another episode of Finnish Photo Fridays, which I might as well call Finnish Photo sometime during the weekends or whenever I finally get around to uploading due to my tardiness with these. But hey, Saturday's better than Sunday. Anyways, once again, I'm your host, Matt DeRizio, author of Finnish Mauser C96, three-line rifle to Ukko-Pekka, and today we have an incredible image that not only shows some of the unique firearms used by the Finnish Army during World War II, but also highlights some of the unsung heroes that also served there. This essay Kuva image from the Finnish National Archives dates to August of 1941 and is more than meets the eye initially. Viewers probably gravitate initially towards the two helmet-fuls of potatoes at first glance, and maybe after that they might see the Mauser C96. But they'll likely miss some other details that are present. This photo depicts a Finnish TK, or Tiedotuskomppania information company, photographer. One of the unsung heroes I mentioned earlier. Created after the Winter War in 1940, the TK companies were critical but relatively unheralded units that served under the Finnish Army's Information Division, and they were active during the Continuation and Lapland Wars. The soldiers working in these companies, known as TK-miehet or TK-men, were often professional journalists, artists, or advertisers in civilian life, and some were even notable authors or illustrators. They served as war correspondents, photographers, cinematographers, and war reporters. Their primary mission was to, quote, liven and inform the public behind the front line through their writings, photographs, and films, ensuring the Finnish people felt connected to the Army's activities and strengthening the national will to win the war. In this shot, our photographers fulfilling that mission, perhaps taking a break from documenting the war effort to collect provisions, like the foraged potatoes that could be in these two helmets that he's carrying. Nevertheless, their work was vital and provided a historically valuable visual record of the conflict that's still studied today. Reijo Porkka, the preeminent author on this admittedly somewhat obscure subject, notes in his 1983 work, Sodasta kuvin teiku valokuvas, 1941 to 1944, that there were only about 50 TK photographers that served in the Finnish Army during the Continuation War. They were photographers active in the photography groups of the TK companies and in the photography department of the military headquarters, although the TK companies seemed to be where the main work was done. The photography equipment used during the war included Contax 1, 2, and 3 cameras, originally intended for the 1940 Olympics, which were meant to be held in Helsinki, and they relied on 35mm film as well as 6x4.5, 6x6, and 6x9 film. According to Porkka, there were 18 different brands of cameras in use at the time, which makes me think of the poor Finnish armorers using 18 different types of sidearms during the Continuation War. And there was hardly any additional equipment, so a lot of the men that served in the TK companies brought their own personal equipment, as they didn't have any wide-angle lenses, there were hardly any filters, and there was no exposure meters. It was expected that the professional photographers employed by the Finnish Army as TK men would be able to calculate exposure without even the use of any special equipment. So the variety and the quality of the photos seen in the National Archives varies, and it makes a little bit more sense when you keep this in mind. The individual depicted in the photograph is Tauno Norjavirta, who is a Finnish photographer known for his work mainly during World War II, and also did some minor work on films that you can even find on IMDb, such as Baladi and Vaivaisukan Morjasan, which is The Troublesome Bride, which is a great title for a film. He was a talented photographer, and it plainly shows in all of the images of his that are found in the Finnish National Archives. So, taking a more detailed look at this image, first things first, we've got a couple helmets full of potatoes right there. Can't really tell which type of helmet they are. Moving up, we've got a Mauser C96. It's in a special Finnish belt rig right there. I have a similar example that was pictured in my book. Fairly large puukko pictured on the belt next to it. Coming over here is what I thought was interesting. That's an armband, TK or TK for the TK companies right there. And then coming up towards his collar, it looks like he's got white cloth of some kind sewed onto each shoulder strap. I don't know if that's some kind of identifying mark or something they did to identify friendly troops, kind of like how you saw the use of duct tape used during the war on Ukraine by both Russian and Ukrainian troops. I've seen it in a few other photographs from 1941 during that summer and seems to have faded out of use after that. Speaking of firearms, although the sidearm on his waist is largely obscure, the distinctive shape of the holster and the protruding grip identify it as none other than the venerable M96 or C96. This specific example appears to be the 7.63 by 25 variant, at least based on the grips, which show no signs of the red 9 marking common to the 9mm parabellum variant of the pistol. Often affectionately called the Mauser or Old Man Mauser by Finnish troops, the M96 was a holdover from the Finnish Civil War. Germany had supplied Finnish nationalists with approximately 2,000 of these semi-automatic pistols in 1918, a mix of C96s chambered in both 9mm and in 7.63. Although the Finnish army initially handed them over to the Civil Guard in the 1920s after acquiring newer M19 Ruby and M23 Luger pistols, the constant demand for small arms during the Winter War in 1939 forced the Finnish army to recall the aging M96 back into frontline service. The Finnish army used the M96 extensively during both the Winter War and the Continuation War. In June of 1940, the Finnish army counted approximately 614 M96 pistols in use, comprising about 271 in 7.63 and another 343 in 9mm. Finnish troops typically favored the M96's pistol's combination stock holster over any other type of holster when carried. The Finnish army used the M96 on the front lines, and they even experimented with fitting new barrels to it by cutting off the barrel, putting threads on, and then putting a new TK barrel on it, although this seems to have been used somewhat sparingly. After the end of World War II, the Finnish Defense Forces placed the remaining M96 pistols into storage, retaining 422 of them in 7.63 and another 587 in 9mm, according to a 1951 inventory. They later sold 359 of those chambered in 7.63 off to Inner Arms and kept the 9mm variant until the 1970s, until those were finally done being sold off in 1971. As for collecting, you can sometimes spot the distinctive Suomen property marking, and that's almost always going to be on the right side of the pistol, usually below the Mauser Obendorf mark, somewhere on the right side of the frame. You can see it here on both these examples, one of which is in 7.63, the other one which is in 9mm. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Finnish Photo Fridays. Nähdään pian taas, ystäväni.